Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Shasta County Board of Supervisors for Tuesday, February 26, 2013. If you would stand, please. I would like to commence the meeting this morning with a moment of silent prayer and reflection for a good friend of Shasta County, Mr. Ken Gifford, who passed away on February 14th. Ken was a wonderful and caring man who accomplished much in his life and did much for our community. He was generous in spirit and in purse, and we are enriched by the time he spent with us. Pastor?
Good morning, Lord. We do ask, Lord, that you take Mr. Gifford into your hands this morning as we open in prayer this morning on behalf of our county. Give us the wisdom to deal with our business here today and give us all opportunities that you have provided for us as a county. We praise you for it. In your name, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Winslow of the Pentecostal Church of God. We appreciate you being here today, sir. Next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Comments should be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the board. Action or board discussion cannot be taken on open time matters other than to receive the comments and, if deemed necessary, to refer the subject matter to the appropriate department for follow-up and or to schedule the matter on a subsequent board agenda. We have two requests this morning, ladies and gentlemen. The first is from Commander Berg. Thank you. Good morning, Commander Berg.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, county staff, good morning. My name is Jim Berg, and I have the privilege of being the Shasta County chapter of the Military Order of Purple Heart, the commander there, and I'm here to invite you all to attend our next meeting, which is going to be on March 13th at 7 p.m., which is a Wednesday, at the Veterans Hall on Yuba Street, and I hope you all have your invitations in front of you. And during this meeting, there's going to be two very special events. The first taking place will be to honor a fallen soldier, Preston Dennis, who died in Kandahar, Afghanistan. I'm sorry. And his stepfather, Bruce Mix, a former sheriff for Modoc County, and his wife, the mother of Preston Dennis. So we're going to be giving him a special presentation to the family. Also, during the ceremony, is going to be a very special presentation by the French Embassy. They're sending delegates up from San Francisco, and they will be presenting a Legion of Honor to one of our longtime members, Purple Heart holder, and also a Silver Star holder, is the third highest military award for valor that you can receive as an individual. Ellis Booth, who also was a prisoner of war, was taken prisoner during the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. And so he's going to be awarded the Legion of Honor, and it's going to be quite a ceremony, and I hope you all can attend. Thank you.
Commander, is the public invited to attend also?
Yes, sir, and there will be light refreshments served during the event, so the public is invited, yes.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Our next speaker this morning is Mr. Bob Berger. Mr. Berger.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I'd like to bring to the board's attention, we have a public safety issue out on Gas Point Road. We're one, and, okay. We have a public safety issue out on Gas Point Road whereby one of the new property owners out there insists on leaving her gate open. And in fact, I spoke to Mr. Modi and Mr. Basenko about it at a cattlemen's meeting last month. And she's upped her game since then. Originally, she would, when she was in there tending to her horses, she would leave her gate open and encourage our cows out onto the road while she was there. Since then, she's gone and leaving it open during the day, in fact, chaining it open, as you can see from these pictures, so that the neighbors would normally come by, and if the cows were in the area, they would close it for her to prevent them wandering out on the road. Now she chains her gate open to not allow that. It makes her real mad. But the first page is three shots of that. The next page is, again, the top picture is the same gate, a different day. And the bottom two pictures on the second page are a different one of her gates, showing the gates are open and the cows were in the area that day and wandering out on the road. So I've spoke to the sheriff about it. He tells me there's nothing they can do unless I sue her and get a court order, and they can enforce that. Animal control tells me they can't ask her to keep her gate closed. That's a matter for the sheriff. So instead of suing her, I thought maybe a Board of Supervisors could pass an ordinance or something making it illegal. I mean, I don't know why she insists on doing that, but she appears to be a well-known personality out in the Igoan area, a very violent person. I myself had to run, my wife and I had to run in her one evening when we're getting the cows off her property. She tried to run over us with her pickup and the cows. So, which, anyway, the third page is an outline. The pink highlight is an outline of her property. The balance of the map there is what I have leased. So, and she has never fenced it. She was advised when she bought the property there were cows grazing in the area, and it is open range, and she's never done anything. She just gets very upset if either a cow or me, or if I go over there to get a cow off her property, she's equally upset. So hopefully the board can address that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Anything, Mr. Modi? Okay, very good. Mr. Lees, perhaps you could explore with Mr. Berger some options that may be available, or ask staff to do so. Our next speaker is Mr. Charles Alexander. Mr. Alexander.
Thank you for the opportunity here today to address the board on the matter of podcasting of board meetings. As you know, there's a certain controversy involving the accuracy of information presented at the February 5th, 2013 board meeting regarding a certain project. Had that meeting been podcast, certainly disagreement over information presented in the media subsequent to that meeting could have been readily verified by one and all. Also, if certain information pertinent to that project was not included in the staff report, which at all would contradict or leave the impression of that with the staff report, then why was it not included in there? Again, this goes back to the issue of openness and accuracy, and if the board meetings were podcast, a lot of questions would be brought to rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to address the Board of Supervisors this morning? All right, then let's move then to item R1 on the regular calendar. Consider adopting a proclamation which designates March 1st through 7th, 2013 as Weights and Measures Week in Shasta County. And we've invited Supervisor Baugh to make this presentation.
I'll go ahead and read the proclamation, and then we'll bring it over to you afterward.
Thank you.
Shasta County Board of Supervisors proclamation, Weights and Measures Week, March 1 through 7, 2013. Whereas March 2013 will mark the 214th anniversary of John Quincy Adams' signature on the nation's first Weights and Measures law, citing the necessity for standard weights and measures enforcement as a public service. And whereas the County of Shasta has recognized the importance of standard weights and measures enforcement by establishing its own Department of Weights and Measures. And whereas Shasta County's Weights and Measures Department has continued its duty of performing weighing and measuring inspections within the limits of this jurisdiction to ensure fair play in all commercial transactions for the protection of all citizens of the County of Shasta, whether they are buyers or sellers. And whereas March 1 through 7, 2013 will be observed nationally as Weights and Measures Week. Now therefore be it resolved that the Shasta County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims March 1 through 7, 2013 as Weights and Measures Week in Shasta County and urges all county merchants and residents to recognize the valuable contribution which state and local weights and measures are making to the welfare of our community. And this proclamation is signed officially this day, David A. Kehoe, Chairman, Shasta County Board of Supervisors.
Is there a motion?
I would move approval.
Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Further discussion of the motion. All those in favor of the motion to accept the proclamation, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Supervisor Baugh. Ms. Pfeiffer, good morning.
Good morning. I'm Mary Pfeiffer. I'm the Shasta County Sealer of Weights and Measures. And I would like to thank the board for taking this action this morning to recognize March 1 through 7th as Weights and Measures Week in Shasta County. I realize that many members of the public don't think of us in the Weights and Measures Department when they think of government services and things that we can do for them. But the activities carried out by my staff in my office impact everybody. Whether you're buying or selling anything, you go to the grocery store, you go to the gas station, we've had a hand in that transaction. County staffs throughout the state carry out these inspections statewide, and here in Shasta County, we typically do about 3,000 inspections per year of these various devices in the county. We test gas pumps, we test taxi meters, we test water meters, we test the meters on propane dispensers. We test the meters at the airport as they are filling up the planes with their aviation fuels. We test scales from the jeweler's scales that weigh very expensive, very precious metals to the truck scales at the truck stops along Interstate 5. And what probably impacts more people is we test the scales in grocery stores and mini markets and those sorts of places where, every day we go in and we buy the things that keep our families fed and clothed and such. We also perform many other types of inspections. We do price verification inspections. We test the scanners to make sure that they are computing prices correctly. We test packaged goods to make sure that the quantity statements are correct and that labels are correct. We also audit weighmasters. We check signage at gas stations to make sure that you can do value comparisons when you're buying those types of commodities. And something that I'm sure Supervisor Kehoe will be glad to hear, we respond to consumer complaints. And we encourage people to call our office if they have a concern, they have a question, they don't understand something. And I'm pleased to report that most devices in this county are accurate, and I like to think that we are above average, not just mostly due to their staff. I mean, we are out there constantly, and that presence really does have a positive effect in our county. We also work closely with our other colleagues, for situations that kind of cross county lines. If we're dealing with a store or a commodity that operates within the state or nationally or even internationally, we communicate with other jurisdictions in order to address issues of concern. We do work with the district attorney's office when we find problems, although we'd like to solve them at a lower level than that. But, our actions do cross every line. And we protect consumers and businesses, as was pointed out. And I think the establishment of the weights and measures laws over 200 years ago is still as vital today as it was 200 years ago. And again, we encourage any member of the public to call our office if they have any concerns, or check our website.
Ms. Pfeiffer, so a member of the public, let's say Dr. John, calls your office. What happens then?
Well, if he's got a complaint about, he thinks he was overcharged for a commodity, we'll ask you questions, we'll take the information down, and we send out an inspector typically to that store to do an investigation. Sometimes we can't do things because there's been too much time that has passed, or the commodity is no longer there. But we try and respond to each complaint. And we strongly encourage people to check their receipts as they're walking out the grocery store, especially on sale items. That's where we typically find problems. We're happy to take care of Dr. John or anybody else.
Any other observations or questions? Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chairman Kehoe. I think, I'm kicking stuff over here, though. I think you said it. This is one of the less glamorous jobs within Shasta County. However, for each and every person who pays their bill, whether it be at the local garden center or at the gas station, and they pay the fair price and the right price and not a penny more, they thank you, and they don't even know they're thanking you, but they appreciate it when they get home and they still have a few pennies left, especially with the price of gasoline as it's changing by the thimbleful, isn't it?
Well, we've had a few calls.
I'll bet you have. So on behalf of the Shasta County Board of Supervisors, I want to extend a thank you and appreciation for your professionalism, your proficiency in the job that you do. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much. And my staff appreciates the recognition as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Baugh. Item R2 is very important to us. It's consider appointing District 3 Supervisor Pam Giacomini as a candidate to the Sierra Nevada Conservancy Board. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for your willingness to serve, Pam. Item 3, presentations. Receive an update regarding Haven Humane Society. Gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for your vote last year of 5-0 to work with us for the next 25 years. Before the contract actually started in the summer, in the Ponderosa fire, the sheriff called me at home one night and said, we're in trouble. And I sent all my troops up there. We spent 4 days and 4 nights working with the county. We saved 111 animals. And we found working with the county officers was just an incredible experience. January 1st, we opened up the new Morgan Adoption Center. Your officers from the county every day bring animals to us where we're sheltering them. It's been an incredibly wonderful working relationship, and we're just honored that you chose us, and we're looking forward for our next 25 years. If you remember the day, those of you who were here then, if you remember the day one of the ladies in the audience came up and said, Ray John is not a young man. And kind of broke my heart a little bit. But she was right. So the Pope and I are retiring this Thursday. And I have found a young man, 25 years my junior, who will do an incredible job. Mark Story is with me. Mark is a retired Air Force veteran, and as a Marine, I'm still proud that he's a veteran. Mark is a local Reading fellow. His daughter is in Enterprise Starship. She's a junior. His wife, Tina, they're local. And he's a great animal lover. And to be frank with you, at Haven, they can't wait till Thursday's over. Mark Story.
I'm on you.
Thank you, Dr. John.
Okay, good morning. Thanks for the introduction, Dr. John. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be with Haven Humane. I'm really proud of the organization. Dr. John has left some big shoes to fill, obviously, so we're excited. We're ready for change. The New Morgan Adoption Center is fantastic. The new contracts are working out great, and I look forward to working with all you in the future. And if I can be of any service, please give me a call and let me know. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Stories. And Dr. John, thank you on behalf of us in the county. We really appreciate all your efforts. A job well done. Supervisor Baugh.
Thank you, Chairman Kimo. I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you as well on behalf of the residents on the ridge from Shingletown. Everywhere I went, greatly appreciative of you working in tandem with the Sheriff's Department to save the animals. So many thank yous personally. Also, Mr. Stories, I want to pass on to your daughter. I attended the Saturday night performance of Enterprise Starship. I want to say the best ever, the best. The quality, the talent, the best. I've attended them for years. That was it. Well, that might have been it. That might have been it. Anyway, you tell your daughter anyway. Supervisor Chappelle.
Yeah, I just want to say to Mr. Story, I am proud to have you on board there, and I think you're going to be a great asset to the Humane Society. I've known him for several years, and you guys couldn't have selected a better person. And my wife did extend Starship, and she said your daughter's singing really well.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Anything else? All right, let's move then to item R4, receive a report from Director of Support Services, Michelle Schaefer, on the 2012 Winter Walking Challenge winners. Ms.
Yes,
Schaefer.
thank you.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm happy to be here once again, recognizing our wonderful employees who participate in our wellness and safety program. This was our walking challenge that we had that ran from November 5th to November 30th, just in time for the rain to start pouring. But they were very creative. They took well advantage of the parking structure out here. I know I saw quite a few folks walking. And I personally learned that if you walk the perimeter of the mall 4 times, it's 2 miles. So when it's raining and you get some extra exercise when you're, making sure you're being careful walking around people who are walking in the mall. So we all worked really hard, and we had 25 teams consisting of 235 employees, and we walked a total of 253,486 minutes during that time frame. So we find that walking 30 minutes a day can exponentially decrease chances of heart disease and stroke. So just 30 minutes a day is all it takes to add significant years to one's life. So that's why we encourage our employees to walk and live a healthy lifestyle. So with that, I would like to recognize our teams. We have 4 teams that we're going to recognize today. The first place team is from the Assessor Recorder's Office, and I do believe we have some representatives from there. They each, come on down, they each get a t-shirt, and they get this lovely perpetual trophy. And then we have a plaque as well that they get to keep. Second place team is the number crunchers from the auditor's office. Our third place team are the risk walkers from Support Services. We had 2 teams out of our office, and the risk takers were third place. The risk walkers. Sorry. Picture? Yeah. I'm looking at all these minutes. In fourth place, we had a walk and a hard place from the Department of Child Support Services. Do we have any representatives from there? And actually, Debbie Alexander from A Walk and a Hard Place is our first place individual winner with 4,680 minutes. And she also wins a $50 Sports Authority gift card.
All right.
Second place was Patty Wright from the Number Crunchers with 4,560 minutes. Third place, we have Sunday Russell from A Walk in a Hard Place with 4,470 minutes. And then fourth place was Sean O'Brien from A Walk in a Hard Place, 4,140 minutes. We'd like to thank the board and Mr. Lees and the department heads and all of the employees for your continued support of our Total Worker Health Program and all of the activities that we continue to provide and sponsor and support for the health and wellness of our employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer, for your efforts. We appreciate it. Yes, Mr. Modi.
Yeah, thank you. I just would like to, congratulate Ms. Schaefer for organizing, keeping this going, but to our employees as well for making the effort to be healthy, to put your time and effort into this. All jobs have stress with them and other issues, and certainly being out there and a little exercise and a little walking is a great way to take care of some of that stress. But also healthy employees are good employees, and hopefully you're just adding more years to your life and more fun with your family. So thank you all for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item R5 is a presentation. Receive an update on activities at Whiskeytown National Recreation Area from Park Superintendent, Mr. Jim Milestone. This is brought to us courtesy of Supervisor Modi.
Thank you, and I just wanted to welcome the superintendent here. He makes an annual trip visit to us to kind of give us an update on what's going on in Whiskeytown, and there's always new things, and we appreciate your efforts and your time coming down here to talk to us today.
Thank you, Supervisor Modi, and Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kehoe, and Mr. Baugh, and the new supervisors, Chappelle and Giacomini. I want to say hello. So I came down this morning from the snow-capped mountains of Whiskeytown, the backdrop of beautiful Redding, California, the small town with city pleasures surrounded by nature's treasures. And certainly the National Park Service and the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management have throughout the county sprinkled the gold nuggets of these treasured recreation areas of our nation. We have here the upcoming great event. The Friends of Whiskeytown is putting on its annual luau at Brandy Creek Beach on June 15th. Save the date. You all have cards there, and we have other cards here, but the Friends group raises money to help us, the National Park Service, do various projects throughout the park, such as building footbridges and things like that, new trails, and hiring college kids to build trails in the summertime through the Student Conservation Association. So this is a really good cause on June 15th. Tiki torches, hula dancers, and roasted pig. So it's a great time. Whiskeytown National Recreation Area had over 814,000 visitors this year. And that's up about 100,000 visitors from last year or 2 years ago. And so this was good. Our park staff was involved in many activities throughout not only Whiskeytown and Shasta County, but also across the nation. You recall last year about this time there was the tragic death of a small infant of a homeless family, the McDonald case. I just wanted to point out that this man was fleeing after killing his son, and he was hitchhiking through Whiskeytown, and our park rangers apprehended him because of the quick work of Shasta County Sheriff's Department and the Reading Police Department. They had issued a BOLO, a be on the lookout. When our rangers stopped this gentleman in the rain off of Highway 299, he was apprehended by park rangers, and then the quick response from Shasta County Sheriff and the Reading Police Department came out and conducted a search with the Shasta County Search and Rescue Team, and we were able to solve this, help solve this crime. So there's a value with having the National Park Service and our emergency services out at the park for Shasta County and the 814,000 visitors in the surrounding communities. On a happier note, we reached a milestone this year with over 24,000 people have now participated in the free ranger-guided kayak trips out at Whiskeytown in the last 10 years. 24,000 people. Most of those had never been in kayaks, and they had a wonderful experience, including the romantic moonlight kayak tour on Whiskeytown Lake. So I just think it'd be great this summer if you all came out and went on one of our kayak tours. This is Ranger Bobby Gutierrez, and he put together a wonderful event. We had this spectacular event of the annular solar eclipse last spring, and he organized 28 astronomy clubs to come out to Whiskeytown. It happened to be the perfect place on the West Coast to view the solar eclipse. And we had people from Washington, Oregon, and California come to Whiskeytown, stay here in Reading. We had over 3,000 visitors at the park. They all came and searched for the annular eclipse to occur, and we had beautiful weather and great conditions, and it involved a tremendous amount of children that got to see this once-in-a-lifetime event. And these people aren't pointing at Leonard Modi campaign sign, but actually this wonderful event right here. Here's a picture I took of the annular solar eclipse. So it was a great event, 3,000 people, and that was pretty phenomenal for Whiskeytown. Usually when we have a special event out there, we'll get a couple of hundred people. So this was a really big deal, and it was a happy event, and it was something that really brought education. Oh, here we have the last June. We had on June 9th. We had our luau at Brandy Creek Beach, and we had quite a community support there and raised a lot of good money for projects such as this. This is Boulder Creek Falls, one of the prettier waterfalls at Whiskeytown, and this is the new footbridge that the fundraiser was able to construct as a result of the money raised at the luau. And now we have year-round access to Boulder Creek Falls. So when we have this high rains and rain on snow events and flooding, and the falls are just booming, it's a great time to go view the falls. But unless you could get across this creek, and if you were elderly or if you had children, it was a dangerous thing to do. And so now we have these footbridges, and we plan on building a new one this coming spring from donations to Whiskeytown Falls. That old breakaway bridge was lost in a winter storm. So we want to build these new standard bridges that are high above the floodplain and will last for years. So just a report on the summer. We had a wonderful summer at Whiskeytown. There weren't any tragic events. We had a very peaceful time. Like I said, 814,000 visitors. And just to give you, put that in perspective, Crater Lake National Park gets around 350,000 visitors. Lassen Volcanic National Park gets around 400,000 visitors. And so the people of Reading and Shasta County and folks from all over the world, passing through this area recreate. And that 800,000 visitors are those people that actually jump into the water at the lake or hike the trails to the waterfalls. we have, in addition to that, 1.9 million cars driving through the park on Highway 299 annually. So there's a lot of visitors, and we don't even count those. Caltrans does, and but we are responding to accidents and medical issues. Just yesterday, the day before, there was a man driving down Highway 299 and in front of one of our water treatment operators going to the plant, and he suddenly veered off the road and almost crashed, and he had a sudden medical issue, and our park staff was able to get an ambulance. 911 came out and took care of it. So some of the construction work we've done at the park, we built a beautiful vista at Guardian Rock Vista Point near Need Camp, so the kids can hike up from Need Camp, and our park maintenance crew constructed this, and here's the Vista Point completed, something we've been trying to do for many, many years. It looks down on Lower Clear Creek. This is the stream connected to the Sacramento that goes down to the Delta into San Francisco Bay and brings the salmon through the Golden Gate, past Alcatraz Island, and then up to Whiskey Town, and where they spawn. And so this is a wonderful Vista Point, and we had a ribbon cutting ceremony, and it was all designed and built to allow for people in wheelchairs, disability. It meets ADA standards, and so this is a new trail that we were able to construct, and something we did through our fee dollars that we collect from our entrance fees at the park. Another thing that we were able to do is, here's our old dock, which held our park maintenance boats, our park ranger patrol boat, and the U.S. Coast Guard Flotilla 39 volunteer Coast Guard auxiliary boat. And we were able, and the problem with this, it was exposed to the winds and the sun and beating down. So we now have a brand new facility that the federal government was able to purchase, and so it'll make our crafts last a lot longer, protect them from the weather, and give us a lot more protection. So this is a great facility that we were able to build. This is the old floating store, and I'm happy to report that in March, the concessionaires bringing in the new floating store that'll be at the Oak Bottom Marina. Our marina, brand new docks that we were able to put in several years ago, are working great. These are floating concrete docks, and they have a life cycle of many, many years. So this is something that we're really proud of. During the year, we held several public meetings. This is our backcountry meeting. We had over 200 people come and participate in comments for our backcountry management plan, that we're looking at our trail system and trying to accommodate a new type of management of the backcountry. One of the things that we're looking at is which trails are going to be designated to have horses and bicycles on. And we're going through the federal rulemaking process to be able to do that. And it'll officially designate trails in the park that will allow for bicycles. Right now, it's through the superintendent's compendium, which is just kind of through the authority that I have, but we're going through this federal rulemaking, which will really guarantee into the future that these trails will be open to bicycles and horses, and then which ones will not be. So we're doing that. It's a public process that we're going through. Just a little small example of tourism coming to Reading. These people, these two kids, have gone through the nation, and they're wearing vests, and on the vests are these plastic park ranger badges, and they represent different national parks. And this family has traveled across the United States over the years, and these kids have participated in the Junior Ranger program. And so they have, I think these kids have more Junior Ranger badges than anybody I've ever met. And here they are standing at Oak Bottom Beach, having just completed the free ranger guided kayak program and received their Junior Ranger badge. And because they were such dedicated Park Service supporters, I came out and met them at the beach, and we had this nice picture taken. But these two kids in grammar school, just going around, their parents driving them around the nation to different national parks, learning about the United States. We didn't have any large fires at Whiskeytown this last summer, but as you know, over in the Cascades there at Lassen National Park, we had the Reading fire, and Lassen evacuated all of their museum materials during the Ponderosa fire and the Reading fire down to Whiskeytown. So we were working cooperatively. All of our firefighters were up at these fires working to help contain them. So this is some of the issues. Although we didn't have any fires at Whiskeytown, our fuels are pretty extensive, and we are actively burning through prescribed fire. And this morning, at this time right now, they've ignited a 100-acre fire at Whiskeytown It's called the East Boundary Fire, and it's a prescribed burn just outside of Old Shasta on the east boundary of the park. And this is a big concern because here's a photo of Lower Creek Canyon, and we're very concerned about wildfire coming up from the lower lands outside of the park near Placer and those BLM lands. From a cigarette, a chain dragging on the road, something like that, sparking. We have heavy fuels in this area, and so the National Park Service is actively trying to manage fuel reduction and making resilient landscapes and working with the local communities of French Gulch, Iga Ono, and Old Shasta to try to make for a safe environment, because we will have fires. The big fire in Swayze in 1972 is many, many years ago, and it's prime for burning again. And as we all went through the 2008 fires, we know that that's a real danger here. So we were lucky this last summer with its dry conditions. One of the things that I'm very proud of is the Friends of Whiskeytown has sponsored for the last about 7 years an artisan residence program. And this is a very renowned artist named Jolene Dewsbury. She came to Whiskeytown, and we have this arrangement where professional artists send in applications. They come to Whiskeytown. We have a cabin for them near Brandy Creek in the woods. They spend a week to a month. Jolene wanted to spend a month. She did, and she left one of her beautiful paintings for us, for our art collection that we're keeping and building up in the park. This art collection, it just is on art of Whiskeytown. When I got to the park 12, almost 13 years ago, that we had no art, and so we've been soliciting these professional artists to come stay rent-free at the park, produce art. And then Jolene, she gave a really nice little wine and cheese presentation down at Turtle Bay, and the local art community came out, and during that time she showed her 30-minute PBS special on her artwork. I don't have a PBS special yet, but I just thought it was great, and we're getting some high-quality artists. And so it was wonderful to have Jolene here, and she produced a lot of artwork. Here's a photo of her in the cabin, and it was a delight to be with her. And so we have about 8 artists now that have just submitted applications to us. So in December, we had the Old Time Holiday event. We had heavy rains that week, and it was really kind of miserable weather. I didn't expect many people to come out. Usually we have about 800 to 900 people come to this happy family event. We had about 400 people come, and they built wreaths and took them home, and that was a great event sponsored by the Friends of Whiskeytown. So that's really good. Oh, here's the Deepwater Horizon disaster. And I just wanted to point out that when we have these big national disasters, like in this case with the Deepwater Horizon disaster, when the oil platform blew up and the 11 men died, the consequences of this was tons of oil floating ashore coming onto, in this case, Gulf Islands National Seashore, a unit of the National Park Service. And so I went with several of our park staff, archaeologists, and other resource advisors, and worked with the crews to pick up the oil. And they've, through these crews, under the supervision of the park rangers like myself, we've collected over 3 million pounds of oil that had washed up onto the beach over the period of those 2 days. But we sent electricians and safety officers to New York during Hurricane Sandy just recently as a part of the National Park Service's system of trying to help the other parks. We call it the buddy system, and we go out and bring support to these parks that are under siege and being threatened by these natural disasters and man-made disasters in some cases. So here's a group of 4 handsome men on Muletown Road, and you see the dashing Supervisor Leonard Modi, Dave Larrabee from our Chief of Maintenance, Pat Minturn, and of course Larry Lees, and they're standing on the washed out county road here, and we had a good meeting to try to deal with these county road issues and the maintenance of it. They came through and they did a great job of repairing this road and getting it usable again. And this is just one short section of many miles of county road in the park, and I just encourage the county to continue to do good maintenance on these roads so that the visitors can use them and enjoy the park, and also we can use them for emergency situations. And there's an opportunity coming up where the Federal Highways Program can take, because these county roads are inside the legislative boundary of the park, we're working with Pat Minturn and the Federal Highways to work out this deal where the county would put up about $500,000 and the federal government would put in about up to $7 million in repairing the road from the visitor center out to Brandy Creek Beach. And it's a really good opportunity to be able to get this done through the federal highways system. So it's an opportunity that we'd really like to see, and they'd also be replacing these culverts that are failing over near Brandy Creek and the road is sinking. So some really good opportunities to do some cost sharing there and get some great benefits for the county and for the visitors at the park. This is a historic photograph of the original superintendent of Whiskeytown named Leon Mitchell. Leon Mitchell is holding this gold-plated Whiskeytown whiskey jug in 1972, and this was given to him by the last gold miner of Whiskeytown, Mr. Paul McDermott, and it was gold that he had mined from the hills of Whiskeytown, and here's Leon with this gold whiskey jug, and we've never seen this gold whiskey jug. It turned out Leon Mitchell died while he was still working for the Park Service, and I think he took it home one day, and we just never got it back. But in December, here comes Darrell Foster, and he married Marie, Leonard's wife, after Leonard passed away, Leon passed away, and so Mr. Foster was cleaning out the closet, and he found the gold whiskey jug, and he gave it back to the park, and we have it in our museum collection. So it's really cool to have and have the history. And along with that came a whole bunch of papers, and here's a nice photograph of Superintendent Leon Mitchell back when he was the first superintendent of Glacier Bay National Park, just before he moved down to Whiskeytown, and that's his secretary next to him in what we call the Park Service uniform of 1963. It was kind of like the Pan Am flight attendant uniform. We got rid of that finally, but anyway, it's kind of a photo like from Mad Men. But this is part of the history of what we're collecting. Here's a man feeding a deer at Lassen Volcanic National Park, and if you told Superintendent Darlene Kuntz about this, and it said there's a man in silk slippers feeding this buck at Lassen, it sent up park rangers, but it happened to be the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, the night before he gave his great speech on his 1963 conservation tour of Whiskeytown. And we're coming up to the 50th anniversary of that speech on September 28th this year. And so we're going to do a little celebration at the park, and I'll tell you more about that later on. But there's James Carr right next to him, the father of Whiskeytown, the local boy who became the Undersecretary of the Interior in 1963 in the Kennedy administration. So this is pretty exciting. And then there's beautiful Whiskeytown. Like I said, it's just been a very successful year. We were very pleased with how things went. We're getting ready for of course, we're getting ready for the June 15th luau at Brandy Creek Beach, but we're also bracing for the possible sequestration that we're looking at. So we've been doing a lot of budget planning of late. So that's my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Milestone. It seems to me, in all fairness, that we should give Supervisor Modi a bit of time for rebuttal.
I'm sure those kids were pointing at my sign. I have just one question. You mentioned about the breakaway bridge that was being replaced and the new bridge to the Whiskeytown Falls being put in. When's your expected completion date on that?
Well, Waterfall Week starts April 21st, and that's when we try to encourage 1,000 children to hike with the rangers up to Whiskeytown Falls. And now that all the county employees are in great shape, they should all be part of the Whiskeytown Challenge. But we want to get up there and try to get that bridge in place by April 21st. And so the Friends of Whiskeytown have put up $4,000 to go to that bridge. The particular bridge design is it's a 40-foot span to get across there to keep it at high water. We don't want to spend this money and then have the bridge wash out. So we're trying to build bridges that are a good several feet above the creek and off the floodplain. So we hope to get that done by April 21st. That's my goal.
Great, thank you, and thanks for all the hard work that you and your staff do out there, making it such a great recreational opportunity for so many people, as you mentioned, from around the world, but I think a lot of people need to realize it's right in their own backyard as well.
Let's show our appreciation.
Thank you.
Item R6 is a presentation. Receive a presentation from the Health and Human Services Agency Director, Mr. Donnell Ewert, regarding the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Mr. Ewert, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Kehoe and members of the board. My task today is to try to give you an overview, a high-level overview of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act of 2009, also known as Healthcare Reform or Obamacare, and I'll be just referring it to today as the Affordable Care Act. This is one of the most substantial policy changes in our country in a generation, and it impacts many different institutions and individuals in our community and all across the country. It impacts individuals, it impacts businesses, healthcare providers, the state government, and the local county government. There are several problems in our healthcare system that the Affordable Care Act was intended to try to fix, and several of them are listed here. One is the high cost in our system. We spend about 17% of our gross domestic product on healthcare, which is much higher than many other developed countries. We have incomplete insurance coverage, meaning that there are millions of Americans who don't have access to health care with health insurance, and that includes over 27,000 residents of our own county. And we have poor health outcomes compared to other developed countries. If we were spending all that money and it made us the most healthy nation in the world, that would be one thing, but unfortunately that's not the case. And then we have incentive issues in our compensation for medical care. Our medical system reimburses people for doing, or providers for doing procedures rather than keeping the population well. So I was going to show you a few graphs to illustrate some of these issues. This is a graph showing the growth in percentage of GDP spent on healthcare in numerous developed countries in the world. The United States is that red dotted line, and the rest of those, mostly European countries, are in that other cluster. And you can see that we're quite an outlier. Spending, again, now it's 17.6% of GDP in 2010, compared to an average of 9.5% GDP for other developed countries in the world. The closest nation to us is the Netherlands, and they spend 12% of GDP on healthcare. And this graph illustrates the premiums and the fact that they're rising at a rate higher than inflation. During the last 10 years or so, healthcare premiums have been going up at an average of about 6%, which is 2 to 3 times higher than the inflation rate. And you can see if you project out that kind of inflation, that a family would be paying about $24,000 a year for their health, just for their premiums in 2019. This graph is illustrating the percentage of the population and that have different kinds of health insurance, and I apologize for the small print there at the bottom. And the red bars are the United States, and the blue bars are Shasta County. And one of the points I want to make here, first of all, is that you'll see in the far left bars that the percentage of the population with private health insurance is much lower in Shasta County than it is in the United States, and it's less than 50%. So less than 50% of the population actually has private health insurance only. The third set of bars is both private and public coverage, and that's mostly folks who are retired and who have Medicare as well as a private Medigap insurance. And then you can see in the second set of bars people with public coverage only, and that would be people on Medi-Cal and the County Medical Services Program. And then the fourth set of bars is the percentage of the population that doesn't have any insurance, and that's 16% in Shasta County. If I showed you a graph only of working age adults 18 to 64, the percentage of the population with no insurance in that group is about 25%, so it's much higher. So again, it would be one thing if we were spending all this money and we were getting great health outcomes. The reality is that our life expectancy in the United States is lower than many other developed countries that spend much lower percent of GDP on healthcare. Our life expectancy in 2010 was 78.7 years, much lower than all of these nations whose life expectancies are over 80. We also have much higher infant mortality rate than many other nations. So the goals of the Affordable Care Act then are to expand access to insurance coverage, increase the consumer insurance protections, emphasize prevention and wellness, improve healthcare quality and system performance, curb those rising healthcare costs, all to achieve what's called the triple aim of the Affordable Care Act, which is to control costs, increase access to affordable, high-quality medical care, and to improve health outcomes. So let's talk for a few minutes about the expansion of access to insurance. The ACA requires employers to insure their employees or pay a penalty, and that's only for employers who have 50 or more employees. Smaller businesses with less than 50 employees, which would be most businesses in Shasta County, are exempt. Also, the Act provides for tax credits for small businesses with less than 50 employees who do provide insurance for their employees. They can write off some of that expense as a tax credit. And then require individuals to have insurance. This is the famous individual mandate, which was quite controversial and was a subject of that Supreme Court case. The individual mandate is an important part of the Act because without it, we couldn't have the consumer protections that I'm going to tell you about in a minute. And also it establishes insurance exchange where individuals and small businesses can compare different health plans and buy insurance. And this is quite an interesting reform, and in California it's called Covered California, and it's going to provide a place for people to actually compare like plans from different private insurance companies in order to decide which plan to buy. Also, there's an expansion of Medi-Cal. In the United States it's called Medicaid, in California Medi-Cal, to all persons up to 133% of poverty. And this includes childless adults who are mainly covered right now under the county's indigent health program, which is the County Medical Services Program. There's also federal subsidies for people who earn between 134% and 400% of poverty, and that's a sliding scale arrangement with folks earning between 133 to 150% of poverty having to only pay 3 to 4% of their income for their insurance policy, and then the subsidy would pay the remainder. And up to 350 to 400% of poverty, where individuals would have to pay 9.5% of their income. It also creates temporary risk pools. It allows children to stay on their parents' plans until they're 26, and it enacts consumer protections which help people keep insurance coverage. So these are some of the consumer protections which are dependent on that individual mandate to require all persons to have insurance. And that is that it prohibits lifetime monetary caps on benefits, it prohibits exclusions for pre-existing conditions, and it prohibits cancellation of coverage except for fraud. And these are all very important because these are the kinds of things where people would think they were insured, but then they would end up not having coverage. It establishes a state review of premium increases, an Office of Consumer Assistance, and it establishes minimum medical loss ratios to limit insurance company administrative costs and profits. And that's the limit. So basically that means that a certain percentage of the money collected by the insurance companies through premiums must be spent on medical care. And those percentages are 80% for individual and small group plans and 85% for large group plans. There's a big emphasis on prevention and wellness, under the theory that if we can keep our population more healthy, that we will consume less health care. And so there's a prevention fund and oversight council, and there's a insurance plan. It requires insurance plans to cover certain prevention, clinical preventive services without cost sharing, meaning that there's no deductible or copayment, and increases Medicaid and Medicare payments for certain prevention services, and establishes a federally funded maternal home visiting program, which we have been funded to provide here in Shasta County, and I'll talk about that a little later. In order to curb health care costs, there's oversight of the health insurance premiums and practices, emphasis on prevention, primary care, medical homes for individuals that are not using higher end services like emergency rooms. reducing medical fraud and abuse, fostering competition and price transparency through the health insurance exchange called Covered California, implementing Medicare payment reforms, which have a lot to do with things like not Medicare stopping to pay for readmissions to the hospital for the same condition, or paying for hospital-acquired infections. And so that hospitals are motivated to not make those errors. And then testing new payment and delivery models for Medicaid and Medicare. I just want to mention the bridge to healthcare reform called the 1115 waiver. This was something that was implemented in California. It's called the Low Income Health Program. For CMSP, our County Medical Services Program, it was called Path to Health. And what it was an effort to try to get the federal match, the 50% federal match, in order to ensure some of the individuals who are eventually going to be transitioning onto Medi-Cal in 2014. So for 2 years, CMSP has been running this program. And before, CMSP was completely funded by the counties, as well as a continuous appropriation from the state through realignment. But through Path to Health, they were able to draw down a lot of federal resources, which enabled CMSP to remain solvent until 2014, providing the same benefits while expanding eligibility. So I want to talk in just a few minutes about some of the ramifications for Shasta County for all of these, for things that are in the Affordable Care Act. The Welfare and Institutions Code 17,000 is the code section that requires the counties in California to provide for indigent health care. And it says that every county and every city and county shall relieve and support all incompetent, poor, indigent persons and those incapacitated by age, disease, or accident, lawfully resident therein, when such persons are not supported and relieved by their relatives or friends, by their own means, or by state hospitals or other state or private institutions. And indigent health care has gone back and forth in California between the state and county responsibilities since the 1930s, but since 1982 it has been a county responsibility. So in Shasta County, as well as 34 other counties in California, are part of the County Medical Services Program. We've joined together to share risk and to provide for indigent health care. About 85% of the individuals now covered by CMSP are in Path to Health and will transition to Medi-Cal in 2014, which is only 10 months away. A small residual of about 13,000 individuals will not qualify for Medi-Cal and will remain on CMSP, and that is less than 1,000 individuals in Shasta County. So while the Medi-Cal expansion will pick up a lot of this responsibility, Shasta County will still be responsible for a small number of individuals. A big issue going on right now with the state is the fact that they have provided 1991 realignment for us to pay for our indigent care responsibility. The state feels like they should be able to take that money back, since Medi-Cal is going to be picking up a lot of the individuals that we currently are responsible for in 2014. The county's perspective is the feds are actually paying 100% of the expansion for 3 years, so the state is not going to be incurring any cost. Therefore, our position right now is that the state doesn't need to take our money because they're not going to have any more expense. And we sure have some things to shore up ourselves in our own system. Just to let you know, in Shasta County, we received, in the current year, we're receiving about $9.7 million in 1991 health realignment. $5.361 million goes to CMSP, and that number has been exactly the same since 1991. In addition, the general fund pays a $294,000 participation fee to CMSP every year. The remaining $4.3 million is used for general public health programs such as communicable disease control, chronic disease prevention, injury prevention, and maternal and child health. So while so you can see in this graph is illustrating what's happened with realignment, 1991 realignment since the turn of the century. And it was going up nicely until about 2007, and then we've seen it go down dramatically with the financial crisis we've been in. And you can see that red bar is what CMSP, what goes for CMSP, and the blue parts of the bars is what is used for general public health in Shasta County. And we are now funded for public health at about the level that we were in 2000, 2001. So we've actually gone back more than 10 years in our funding levels. So currently the counties pay 100% of the cost for CMSP and 50% of the cost for Path to Health. Starting in 2014, a lot of these individuals will transition to Medi-Cal. The feds, as I said before, will pay for 100% of that expansion from 2014 to 2016. From 2017 to 2019, they'll pay 95, 94, 93% in each of those years. And then from 2020 on, the federal government will pay for 90% of the cost for that expansion population. Right now, there's a big debate going on in Sacramento about a state option or a county option for the Medi-Cal expansion. In the state option, the state would take responsibility for organizing Medi-Cal. In the county option, they would expect all of us counties to continue our low-income health programs to cover that population. So for Shasta County, that would be CMSP, and CMSP would continue doing Path to Health out into the future. There's not very much support for the county option. There's a few counties, maybe 3 to 5, that are interested in that. The rest of the counties really would prefer the state options, and most of the advocates would, and it seems that that's the sense in the legislature as well. And again, our position is, and Lee Kemper has articulated our position before the legislature in the Senate committee just last week, and he communicated several principles to that Assembly committee, which were no transfer of resources from counties to the state unless there is a state cost, and that counties should use the savings to support the residual population, continue to perform our public health functions, and then reinvest in healthcare, behavioral health, and prevention. So that's the argument being made by CSAC and our other county advocates to the state at the moment. Then there's some impacts on eligibility determination as well. Melissa Janilevich was here last month to talk about the Healthy Families conversion to Medi-Cal, and that's about 3,600 new Medi-Cal individuals in Shasta County. The CMSP Path to Health conversion to Medi-Cal will be about 3,700 people. And the health benefit exchange called Covered California is going to be referring individuals who qualify for Medi-Cal back to the county. So when people call them up and say, I need to buy health insurance, and they do a assessment of their modified adjusted gross income and see that they're eligible for Medi-Cal, they're going to transfer them back to our call center. Now, because we've established the call center in our eligibility section of our regional services branch, we're basically the only call center in Northern California. So they've asked us to be a regional call center for up to 8 counties in Northern California. And so we would be taking up to 5,600 calls a year and doing the Medi-Cal determination for all those individuals. In addition, we expect about 1,200 people in Shasta County to become eligible for Medi-Cal in addition to those that are on Path to Health already. And that's partly because Path to Health only goes up to 100% of the federal poverty level. And then finally, Covered California is going to be doing that exchange, but we believe that many people are going to be walking into our office for assistance in getting health insurance through the exchange, and that could be up to 1,000 people a year. So this is going to increase workload dramatically in our eligibility area, and Melissa is going to be coming back next month with more information about the call center and our need to establish some more positions to staff that call center. And then finally, impact on treatment of mental health and substance use disorders. Currently, many of our clients are insured by Medi-Cal or CMSP. Those CMSP individuals will be converting to Medi-Cal. The good news for us is that they're going to be covered 100% by Medi-Cal, so we're going to get a better reimbursement. Behavioral health was realigned to the county, so we have the state match now, and so we use that to draw down federal resources for the current Medi-Cal population. It's capped. We have a certain amount of it. The good thing is with this expansion, we'll be able to get 100% reimbursement from the feds. On the other hand, some people who are currently eligible for the current Medi-Cal 50/50 are not on Medi-Cal, but will need to obtain insurance because of the individual mandate, and so they may create more demand in our system for realigned resources. I should also say that there's parity provisions in the law as well, which require mental health and substance use disorders to be treated just like all other medical conditions. So that may increase access to mental health and substance use treatment within our general medical system, which is good. As far as overall health coverage, I mentioned those 27,000 people in Shasta County that don't have insurance. the individual mandate and the other provisions in the law will be increasing the percentage of the population that has insurance. That will have some impacts on business. I'm hearing that from the private sector that health insurance premiums have been going up fairly dramatically as a result of some of the expansions of benefits in the law. So that will be impacting some of our local businesses. And then prevention, we have received 2 grants in Shasta County as part of the Affordable Care Act, the Community Transformation Grant, which is focused on chronic disease prevention and chronic disease self-management. And then the Nurse Family Partnership, which is a program that's focused on low-income first-time mothers to try to increase birth outcomes as well as life course outcomes for a mother and child, and to decrease child abuse and neglect. And finally, there are those provisions in the law that require the preventive services through the medical system, which will not have any cost to individuals. So more people will be able to get preventive health care through their medical providers. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ewert. Supervisor Baugh, followed by Supervisor Chappelle.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe. You mentioned that we'll hear more about a regional call center and possible need for additional staff. In advance, do you know if money will be provided for that?
We're hearing that money will be provided for that call center. Since it's a regional call center, it doesn't make any sense for us to do that unless we get money. Unfortunately, we don't have the amount yet, but we're hoping to get that relatively soon.
You mentioned also on the indigent health care area, there was a nice, in fact, an opening slide there that said something about every city and county. And then you went on to say that basically this is a county responsibility. Why does it say city and county then?
Well, it says every county and every city and county. And what that city and county is referring to San Francisco County, because that's the city and county of San Francisco, so they're the one exception, and that's why it's...
Very good, very good. I misread that then. I thought maybe miraculously cities were going to begin to contribute toward...
No, I understand the misunderstanding, but that's just it's a San Francisco quirk.
Okay, very good. And then did you were going to expand a little bit more on the nursing home program. Do you have additional thoughts you want to share about that?
That was the home visiting program, not nurse. It's a home visiting program.
Home visiting program.
Right, and that's the Nurse Family Partnership.
Okay.
And we have a grant to provide that. We have a caseload of 100 women who are low-income, first-time mothers. And the home visits begin during their pregnancy, and they continue until the child is 2 years of age. It's an evidence-based program. It's actually been here before the board, the grant that we received, and it's been a program that's been in existence for 30 years. It's been studied extensively, and it has been demonstrated to show, to prevent a lot of bad outcomes for mother and child, and save a lot of public funds, because we have a lot less incarceration, mental health costs, public assistance costs, and so forth down the road for making that investment early in life.
Well, you know, sometimes we hear what we want to hear. I went immediately to the challenges of the local Intermountain area nursing facilities that are being challenged with shifting of dollars available, and so I thought, okay, maybe there is something that's coming on the horizon here, but not to be. Okay.
No. In fact, the Medi-Cal expansion excludes nursing homes.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Supervisor Chappelle.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe. Yeah, I thought that was an excellent presentation. It seems like trying to get through that mess and trying to come out with a presentation of order was really hard, so I got to commend you for that. My mind says this Affordable Care Act, and I'm just wondering exactly how affordable this is going to be, and the effect that, one, we're going to see a lot of part-time employees. My understanding on this Affordable Care Act is that if you're part-time, they don't have to participate in the required insurance rules of that particular Affordable Care Act. Second is that the doctors that I know are not taking Medi-Cal anymore. And so when we start putting more and more patients on Medi-Cal, I even heard a complaint over at Mercy Hospital about it the other day from a nurse. I mean, she was rampant because evidently it's impacting their budgets, because Medicare is at the point now that it doesn't even cover the costs. They're bringing a patient in, and it's a loss to them to even service that patient. So we're going to find that healthcare is going to deteriorate through that process. It sounds great on paper, but in practicality, it's not going to work. And we're going to have a lot of unhappy citizens when they really realize what baggage they bought into. So in your mind, how do you see if this Affordable Care Act being really affordable?
Well, it's a lot, there's a lot there. Let me just, I think that there's issues with affordability. There's a lot of provisions in the act to try to limit costs. For example, in Medicare, they're trying to, they've already achieved some savings through some of the provisions they've made. They're changing the way hospitals are reimbursed, for example. You may have seen several months ago a report in the newspaper about some of our Dignity hospitals and the results of some of the accountability in the act in relation to those rehospitalizations and hospital-acquired infections and so forth. So I think that there is some savings there, and they're also going to be reshaping how they do the disproportionate share hospital payments, which is what the payments that were made by the feds to hospitals that had a lot of people on Medi-Cal. The other side of it, though, is that hospitals are going to have more paying patients. Right now, our local hospitals have a lot of patients that don't pay anything for their care, and so the costs then are raised for everybody else who has private insurance. Now you're going to have a larger percentage of the population with coverage, so that will help the hospitals out on that end. So in terms of overall, I think that we're still going to see inflation in the medical system. I'm hoping it will be slowed down, but I think that's really too early to say. But I think our local institutions are already under pressure because we have such a high percentage of our patient mix who are uninsured. I think that they're hopeful that they can institute reforms according to the Act that are going to help them survive in the current environment. There are capacity issues, as you mentioned. People are going to have a lot more people are going to have Medi-Cal. We don't have a lot of providers that take Medi-Cal, and so that's going to create more demand in our community health centers, who are our main providers for Medi-Cal. And also, there's going to be more people insured, and do we have enough doctors to serve everyone? Right now, my understanding is that there are very few primary care physicians who are actually taking new patients. So there's a lot of different issues, for sure, that we'll be facing in the coming years.
Yeah, I just have one more quick question. When you talked about additional funding, is that going to be provided by the federal government, or is the state or the counties going to have to participate in that funding?
For the Medi-Cal expansion?
Went back up about halfway through what you were talking about there'll be more care because of more funding, but that care, where's those funds coming from? I know they can't come from the sky, and I'm not trying to be facetious about that, but it's got to come from somebody's pocket, usually the taxpayers. I mean, that's where it all ultimately comes from. But
well, more people are going to have insurance. Some of them are going to purchase it through the exchange. And in the exchange, if you're a higher income individual making more than 400% of poverty, you're going to have to buy that policy yourself. Some of those individuals may decide they'd rather take the penalty because you can just pay a tax penalty rather than buying insurance. For those individuals, they're going to have to go out into the market when they need health care and either pay for it, or they may end up indigent to some extent and not pay their bills. For people who make between 133 and 400% of poverty, the federal government is going to be providing subsidies. So you're right, the taxpayers will be assisting in covering those individuals. But keep in mind, if those individuals don't have insurance now, they are getting free care in hospitals when they need it, and that cost is being passed on to policyholders and to the government as well. So it's a big mix of payer sources, and it's being reshuffled right now.
okay, so the provision, when you say free care, when they go to the hospital, they do get reimbursed. They'll go through a Medi-Cal avenue or another additional avenue to get reimbursed in that, okay? And when you say there's additional people going to be insured, if these people that have these 50-plus employees decide to put them all part-time, 28 hours, those people are now back on 28 to 32 hours are not going to be able to afford insurance because we're going to have less insurance for people. Mm-hmm. It's not going to come into a benefit where they're going to be more. I see you shaking your head yes. Are you agreeing with me? Or
I am. I mean, those okay. Individuals
yeah. So there's not going to be more people being insured. The paperwork says it's going to be, but in practicality, the dollars aren't there. And so if the dollars aren't there, it's not going to happen. And that's what we're being faced with, and we've been sold a bill of goods that's not going to really work real well. And I hope the public can understand that this is not going to work very well for a lot of people's benefits. And now I'm done, and thank you very much. And like I said, your presentation was excellent.
Supervisor Modi, followed by Supervisor Baugh.
Yeah, no, I think my question was answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Baugh.
Well, just the obvious. I don't think there's a single member of this board that would have brought all of this upon us. And I think that I, for one, agree with your position that it's going to be a challenge financially. There's a huge shuffling of resources and employers, and we may even see a new inflation round in the United States of America because of this single act. However, the question is how do we deal with it as a county board of supervisors? We don't have the choice whether or not we accept this. It is a mandate, it is a law, and so the wisdom and the approach has to come through the head of Health and Human Resources. It has to be shared with us. We have to decide whether or not this is the best approach and the wisest avenue and the best way to handle it based upon the mandate that we are presented with. And I want to agree with Supervisor Chappelle by saying thank you for a great presentation. Do any of us want this change? Probably very few of us. Some people I know are excited about all this, but I, for one, am not. But I appreciate the way you're approaching it. Thank you.
Any other observations then from board members?
Yeah, I have just one I'll bring back up. There was comment about the hospitals and the reimbursement for Medi-Cal patients, and now they're going to not break even. Actually, I think for most of the hospitals, that's been the case for a lot longer than just now. It's been going on for years and years where their reimbursements from the feds and the state has never covered their costs, and they've always been passing those costs on to those who can pay or those who have insurance. And then I know that it's even you mentioned Mercy Hospital, and of course they're a nonprofit, and I'm sure for profit hospitals it's far worse, and so it's a real dilemma.
I will mention that Dignity Health, as a large corporate entity, was supportive of the Affordable Care Act. So they seem to think that, and you may have heard John Halfai give presentations, he basically was saying the current system, the way it is, it wasn't going to survive. And so changes were needed. Whether or not all the changes in the Affordable Care Act are going to save the system remains to be seen. But the way things are going currently also is not sustainable.
Thank you, Mr. Ewert. Thank you, board members, for your questions. We will now take a short recess and reconvene at 10:30. Thank you.